Another battle is looming in Tasmania's Tarkine wilderness. On one side are off-road enthusiasts. On the other side, conservationists and the Aboriginal community, who say the Arthur Pieman Conservation Area is being trashed by the four-wheel drives. Reporter David Riley and cameraman Craig Heary recently visited the area to get a better understanding of the issues.
The track from Arthur River to Sandy Cape winds its way south along the wild Tarkine coastline. It's a bumpy ride and can be treacherous in places with metre-deep bog holes, river crossings and quicksand. But for the shack owners and campers who come down here every summer, getting there is half of the enjoyment.
I used to come down here before there was any roads or anything about here. We used to wind across the punt and it'd take us a day to get to Cammer. And then it'd take us a day to get to Sandy Cape. And we were skin divers. And we'd come down here and we'd skin dive out there for crayfish and ling and anything that was about there that we could catch.
Snow Nielsen's been coming to the Arthur Pieman nearly every year since 1957, bringing his children and more recently his grandchildren. There are about 50 other shacks inside the reserve, and in the summer they are packed with families on holiday. His family's shack overlooks Jack Smith's Boat Harbour, about an hour by quad bike from the last sealed road at Arthur River. It's a wild and forbidding stretch of coastline, lashed by the roaring 40s and pounded by the Southern Ocean. But Snow Nielsen says this place is in his blood.
I can't explain, it's a beautiful country. It's different. It's totally different, this country. And I can sit here and look out that window all day and just love it. Never get sick of it.
But retaining access to that country is something he and others are worried about. Earlier this year, the Parks and Wildlife Service proposed closing off large parts of the reserve to recreational vehicles because of the damage they are causing to coastal habitat and Aboriginal sites. It sparked a wave of anger among shack owners and four-wheel drivers who fear it's the beginning of the end for a way of life they've cherished for generations. Graham Airy is a cray fisherman at Cooter Rocks who's lived in the area since he was a boy. He believes conservationists are exaggerating the damage.
What I've seen down here is that it's because of the odd few that get in some of these holes down here and create one hell of a mess, you know, like with their four-wheel drives and churn it up to the point of no return, like it looks like a tractor and a plough's been in it, and a photo gets taken of that, and it ends up in the right place in Hobart in the office, and of course it does look bad. You know, well, photographs can make things look worse than they are.
He feels the vast majority of responsible visitors are being punished for the actions of the few hoons.
You'll always get the odd crazy one, you know, that'll come down here, and there might be 2 or 3 of them, or there might be half a dozen of them, and they've all got the big four-wheel drives that they've souped up, and they've got the big wheels and the winch and all the rest of it, and they're going to show off and try and beat one another.
But the pressure even on the designated vehicle tracks is growing. Recent years have seen a big spike in visitor numbers, particularly off-road campers from interstate. The real attraction of the Arthur Pieman is that it's one of a dwindling number of truly wild areas in Australia still offering free-range access to off-road vehicles.
I don't think the answer is to close the Arthur Pieman off. We're certainly working to keep the Arthur Pieman open. We understand that there needs to be recreational values within the Arthur Pieman. Those recreational values need to be shared by a number of different groups, and we're working on a balance.
But without a cap on vehicle numbers, there are concerns that more than 8,000 recreational vehicle users each year are doing irreversible damage. Along the coast, illegal four-wheel drive and motorbike tracks have cut mazes through the dunes, damaged Aboriginal middens and upset fragile ecosystems.
It is bad. We've got locations where the peat soils have become so boggy that there are sections wider than highways which have become bogs. We've got serious erosion. We've got sea spurge weeds moving in along track networks from the coast. we've got wind blows, so there's no denying that we have problems.
In its proposed management plan, Parks and Wildlife has identified 94 tracks and it's proposing to close about half of them. But the proposal that's most angered the four-wheel drivers is blocking all access from just south of Sandy Cape through to the Pieman River.
It's important for us to remember that the coastline from Sandy Cape south to the Pieman River is a untouched, natural, remote, high-quality wilderness, and the integrity of that coastline is important for us to conserve. There is Aboriginal heritage values in that area because of the degree of untouched and undisturbed nature of them make them extremely rare.
Right along the coast are reminders of the Aboriginal clans, the Tarkina, Manigan and Petanitic people, who walked the area until about 180 years ago. It boasts some of the world's largest shell middens, towering treasure troves of Aboriginal artefacts. Two recent Aboriginal heritage surveys by the Aboriginal Land and Sea Council have raised serious concerns about widespread damage to middens by motorbikes, and they've recommended closing all tracks south of Greens Creek and removing shacks. But after a dispute over the validity of those surveys, Parks recently commissioned another independent study of the Aboriginal sites in the area. Over the past few weeks, an archaeological team has walked the full length of the coastline, using GPS to record each midden, rock carving and hut depression.
Throughout the midden there's Werrinas, whelks, abalone, periwinkles, limpets is their main stable diet from this area, but the site here is quite large.
Vernon Graham is the lead consultant.
Here in front of us we've actually got evidence of a hearth where they actually had a fireplace, and they got the little brown mussels and they actually specifically went and cooked them to open them up to get the meat out.
The results of the survey will help inform a decision on the final list of track closures. But Parks has been working on the plan since 2002, and without any deadline for a decision, conservationists are growing impatient.
What's really disappointing is that the Parks and Wildlife Service have been licensing this sort of damage of Aboriginal heritage and environmental values. There's a bit of a myth that's perpetrated by the government and by off-road vehicle groups that it's only the rat bags or the unlicensed people causing the damage. It's actually the licensed people that are more numerous, and I argue that they actually cause far more impact.
Peter McGlone from the Tasmanian Conservation Trust says what the Parks and Wildlife Service has proposed doesn't go far enough, and he's worried they'll further water it down under pressure from four-wheel drivers.
It's really important that the Parks and Wildlife Service recognises the obligations under its own legislation, and what I mean by that is they can only allow recreational vehicle driving where it is sustainable, where it doesn't clash with conservation of heritage values or conservation values. Now, clearly there are a myriad of heritage and conservation values being impacted every day in the Sandy Cape area and beyond Greens Creek.
In the background is the possibility that the whole Tarkine region could soon receive permanent national heritage listing. The area received emergency protection from the Australian Heritage Commission 12 months ago, after concerns were raised about the impact of the state government's proposed loop road. The listing expires in a week, but the Federal Environment Minister Tony Burke has the option of making it permanent. If that happens, it's likely to mean even tighter restrictions on all activities in the area, including four-wheel driving, a reality that few people in the off-road community are ready to accept.
I wouldn't like to think what the consequences of that be. It'd be an irate community, very much so. I wouldn't like to think what the consequences would be of it.